Good afternoon, everybody. Blake Irving, welcome to Web Summit.
Thanks, Andy.
And Lisbon. And so we're in Europe, as you might have noticed.
I did.
And so just, I think I mentioned to you, I've been a customer of GoDaddy for a long time.
Yeah.
And in those days, you had one currency, and you sold a lot of .coms. That's not what GoDaddy does anymore, and that's not how you do it. Tell us a little bit about the evolution of that.
Yeah, so 5 years ago, GoDaddy was a domains company. It was based in the US. It was English only. We did Spanglish too, so we sort of had a really bad version of Spanish. We accepted only US dollars and US payment types. Over the last 5 years, we evolved the platform to enable us to go anywhere around the world. So now we're in 60 countries, we're in 29 languages, we're in 44 currencies. 7 million of our 17 million customers are from outside of the United States. And 5 years ago, we had 10 million customers, and 2 million were from outside of the United States. So there's been a very big push on globalization for the company. We're now kind of going deep in marketing in our bigger markets. The UK, a big market for us. Germany now with the acquisition of Host Europe Group. Brazil, Mexico, Australia, India, US obviously, Canada. Big markets for us. And we're doubling down and starting to spend significant marketing dollars there.
I've seen your TV ads running, as you mentioned, the TV ads in the UK, and the current TV ads. We'll come back to the old ones in a minute.
Yeah.
And but right now, so you are spending a lot of money, but I do see a focus coming on small business. You're talking to small business a lot.
Yeah.
The website builder, the people who are not in the tech business, but they make great cakes or jumpers or whatever.
Yeah. So this audience tend to be tech entrepreneurs, right? Tech entrepreneurs are folks that work in tech companies. The average people in the world today have no idea what these people think when they get up in the morning, right? They're house painters, they're bakers, they mow lawns, they clean windows. 80% of our customers are service businesses. But they're all tiny businesses, individuals, most of them, which we call solopreneurs, that want to take an idea that they have and turn it into a living. And say like, I've always wanted to be a musician. I think I can actually do that. But how am I going to get customers? How are people going to find me? And the way that starts is they go like, hey, I'm going to go name myself or name my company. Then I'm going to go build a website. And then I get sophisticated. I'll search engine optimize it. I'll get email marketing. When I show up in an inbox, I'll look like I'm a pro, so I don't have a Gmail address or something. And that's what we do for 17 million people around the world now. And it's a pretty significant business. And it's a real homogenous problem because nobody's really built a platform that lets you do all of that yourself.
And the growth of that business, did you see that coming out of kind of the economic challenge that both in the US and Europe that we had? Or has it just been, did GoDaddy create it, or was it a response to market demand?
No, I think, look, we started by making people aware that a domain was a thing. And that was back, 20 years ago when it was like, hey, there's a thing called a domain, and it's about as interesting as cardboard. We can make it more interesting, but it's how you actually get a web address.
Yeah.
Right? We've evolved that now to provide a service that has everything that a small business wants, to be able to look professional and look bigger than they actually are. And as I said, it's homogenous. So people in Malaysia want to look bigger than they are. People in the UK want to look bigger than they are. People in Portugal want to look bigger than they are. In the US as well. And to be able to go allows them to do that. And putting a whole package together that says, we're just going to make this really easy for you. And by the way, if it's still difficult and we didn't do a good enough job with the software to make it simple, we have 5,000 people in the company that do 1.5 million phone calls a day with little tiny businesses who are scared to death of the internet. It just freaks them out. Oh, the interweb is so tricky and I don't understand it. Everybody here just we get it. It's second nature. For the person who's, a tiny business guy who washes windows for a living, he didn't know what the hell to do with the internet. So we actually coach them through this life cycle that they're going through of, I have an idea, I want to turn it into something real, I want to run a business, hey, I'm actually making money. I think I can afford to hire somebody. How do I pay them? What's that look like? And then walk them through all the challenges that let them to become an achiever. And, even if they just want to have Fridays off, and that's why they wanted to work.
That's success.
That's it. That's what they wanted.
Yeah. So you're talking about the evolution of GoDaddy there, and the products and the services that you offer. The evolution of GoDaddy as a brand is a very interesting story in itself. And it was not, I remember the Super Bowl ads. But we live in a different time. We live in a time when people, when the attraction of those ads, I suspect, has dissipated substantially. You were responsible, when you arrived, you probably thought, well, tell us, but you kind of went, wow.
Well, I was a GoDaddy customer for 5 years before I took this job 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I had always kind of looked at the ads. How many of you guys remember the Super Bowl ads? Just see a show of hands.
Okay, a few.
Okay, a few of you. So we actually did what I'll call, pretty provocative ads that showed women in scantily clothed doing provocative things, and says a lot about human nature. Bob Parsons, the founder of the company, brilliant marketer, says, I'm going to go do a Super Bowl ad. It's going to be insanely provocative. What do I know about the Super Bowl? It's mostly guys watching, and they're mostly drunk. And so I'm going to go build some ads that are incredibly provocative. And unfortunately, I think that happened for 10 years, and it cast pretty hard in people's minds. So the last 5 years, what we've done, recognizing that 58% of these tiny entrepreneurs who start a business are women, and we're feeling pretty alienated by those ads. We said, look, we're just going to flip this in a totally different direction. And we're going to show women as small business people, fighting hard, being smart, using the web in a way that can make them bigger than life, because that's the way that they should be shown. And frankly, there's a lot more to that. I will say that the way that the company was portraying itself in public media, 5 to 10 years ago, was very different on the folks that I met in the company when I was interviewing. I met some fantastic people that said that they would start a conversation with an apology. Saying, I'm sorry about that. I know that.
Apologizing for the brand.
Apologizing for the way the brand appeared.
Yeah.
And so, when I took the job, I just asked a whole bunch of people inside the company questions. What do you think about the ads? How does it make you feel? Tell me how that works. And people were just like, well, man, I really wish would square up what we do and who we do it for.
Yeah.
Because we did that.
Yeah.
People would see us in a totally different light. So it was a very natural thing to do.
And what about resistance within GoDaddy when you started this? Or did you just find that the willingness to embrace diversity and perhaps even, respect, that everybody went, ooh, that's a good thing?
No, people were totally ready for it.
Yeah.
So, there was a demand. Anytime you're trying to figure out what you're going to do publicly, you want to start inside your company to see how people feel. Pretty good proxy for what the general public's going to feel. We got 8,000 employees, 5,000 of them on the phone every day, talking to customers, getting an earful every day about what people think about this stuff. And they were like, oh yeah, let's still be a little irreverent. Let's be funny. Let's do things differently, because that's who we are as a company. But can we just change that so it might be Jean-Claude Van Damme playing bongos split between a couple of countertops or whatever, which I think was one of our first.
Yeah.
But they just didn't want to go there anymore. So the resistance was really just completely gone, and they were ready to go.
So, so GoDaddy evolves, and we see you moving into Europe, and then things like, I see you in the news. And then all of a sudden, I hear Blake Irving's retiring, and I went, well, that's a misprint.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, so I'm like really old. Look, I'm 58. I've been in tech since 1981. Was at Xerox in 81. Was on the internet in 81. Wasn't really called the internet back then. And I've been married for 32 of those 35 years. And honestly, my wife has sort of just ridden shotgun with me and put up with, all these people in this room. They work 80 hours a week. They work their asses off. You figure out how to live around your work, and after a while, it's time to take a break and turn that around and try to figure out how I work around my life versus how I live around my work.
Yeah.
my job when I came in, I know I wanted to turn the company around. I know I wanted to take a company that wasn't yet $1 billion and make it into, a $2.5 billion company. I wanted to go global. I wanted to change the brand. I wanted to square all those things. And after 5 years, we increased the value of the company from $2 billion to $8.5 billion. And it's been good. And I feel like 5 years, she put up with me for 5 years doing it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's time to give back and go do some things that I love. I love biking, I love drumming, I love surfing, I love a bunch of stuff that I just have kind of put on the back burner and would like to go do it.
So I know you're a big cyclist, and I expect you to see you in Portugal and surfing as well, of course, as well. But so I know you're going to do that, but I have no doubt you're going to still be involved in tech, and I know there are some specific things that perhaps not of a concern but of an interest to you, like the displacement of workers, like perhaps, and we've heard so much in the last 36 hours about AI, for both the ethical and worker challenges that it brings. When you look to somebody coming into the GoDaddy CEO role over the next 5 years, what challenges will they have from that, or as workers and as a society?
Yeah.
What are you concerned about?
Well, it's very clear that AI is going to displace people before AI helps them. And we know that for every robot that's been deployed in the US, as an example, 6 people are put out of work. That's a pretty rough ratio. I believe, and I think this is a personal passion of mine, is that artificial intelligence used in the same way to enable people to work for themselves, to be able to create a job that maybe 80% passion, 20% living, is something that we can do with AI to help them. And don't think about AI of the robots are landing.
Yeah.
It's AI in a very applied way that says we can help you get customers. We can tell you what businesses look like when they fail, and this is where your business is cyclically, because we've used our pool of 17 million customers. 300,000 of them happen to be in your particular category. We see the signal of what a failure and a success looks like. Here's the things you should do to be successful. Here's the stuff you should avoid to fail. And putting those things into play over the course of the coming years will enable people to take the same tech that put them out of work and put them into work.
Back into work.
Yeah.
So in a way, that almost implies that companies like GoDaddy not only have an opportunity, but I would suggest also a responsibility to say, this is useful data and this is how we can apply it both in non-profit and also for our own profit as well.
Well, yeah. Certainly it helps us from a profitability perspective, but one of the things that we do is we offer very humongous discounts for folks that are going in for the first year, because what we know about entrepreneurs when they're starting a side hustle, and most people honestly start their business as a side hustle where I'm working for a company, and actually at nighttime I'm doing this other thing.
I'm working for GoDaddy. I'm starting a bike shop. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And so now I'm working on this bike shop, and I don't have a lot of money to go actually make it happen. So we try to do a deal where we get people into the platform very inexpensively and then ramp price over time so they can enjoy at least getting started, and we don't put up a big barrier for them. And we do some insanely low pricing for first years, recognizing that's a real thing for people.
In relation to the things that interest you, what about the companies that interest you? And I have to, and we have a few minutes left, but in retirement, you've got one chance to be CEO of any company you like, right? And maybe they're not here at the Web Summit. I think Uber have sorted themselves out in the interim, but what job would you take tomorrow? Who do you think needs fixing in a way?
Oh gosh, look, I think I don't know if I'm the right guy to go talk about who needs fixing. I think there's a lot of companies that are going to have to figure out how they transition to a SaaS-based business model that are not in a SaaS-based business model today, in absolutely every category. And I think if you apply SaaS to companies that don't consider themselves SaaS companies, whether they're manufacturing, whether they're transportation, whether they're manufacturing transportation, which is something else, I think all of those companies are going to go through some pretty rough transitions, Uber notwithstanding, which I think was more of a cultural transition. I think they had a lot of, good momentum in many ways. I think I think there's a ton of folks, if I think about the airline industry, I think there's a ton of opportunity there. I actually am quite excited about battery technology and where battery technology needs to go over the course of the coming years for, not just eliminating petrol, but for being, I think, much more efficient than what we're doing with fossil fuels today. And batteries are still a problem. I mean, there's still an issue, whether it's an automobile or a motorcycle or a boosted board or whatever you're riding.
Apple say their new watch has an all-day life, which turns out is 18 hours.
That's kind of an issue.
Yeah,
it's a huge issue.
So, in relation to the software business, though,
so
you mentioned the transition to SaaS. Who saw Adobe's magnificent transition coming to a subscription base in Creative Cloud? Companies like that have done it. Do you think there's a sense of urgency because of competition, because of people like the audience and the market generally, that the chase is on in a way?
Yeah, I think the chase is on.
Yeah.
I think that companies like Adobe, and honestly, you can see Adobe actually acquiring companies and lining up their next role, which was going to be SaaS-based. And I think what happens with a lot of companies is they'll go acquire a small kernel of change agents, and the CEO and the leadership team will invest in that small cadre of change agents and then push them out across the company. I think that is largely what happened at Adobe to get the Creative Cloud happening, and they've done a fantastic job. I look at Intuit, who's done a much better job moving away from software that was packaged, and now it's not. Microsoft's actually done a pretty darn good job at it. Amazon's killed it. I think Google's got some really interesting stuff they're doing with their cloud. And starting to bring in developers and taking on enterprise workloads and commercial workloads that are focused on consumers. So I think there's just a ton happening. And I worry a little bit about companies that have not made the jump.
Yeah.
There's a boatload of them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that you'll see, and there's some of them are here, that position themselves as we're a SaaS-based company. And if you actually started pulling, through the wires in the company, it's like, oh shit, you're not a SaaS-based company. But you position yourself as it. As soon as you start believing it, maybe your employees will start jumping on it. But there's a lot of work that a lot of these companies got to do, big companies, to actually turn the corner to be SaaS.
Good advice, ladies and gentlemen. The owner of Blake's Bike Shop, but also CEO of GoDaddy. Blake, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you.
We're out that side, I think.